Ides of March, 44 BC. We're in Rome at a meeting place for the Senate. Gaius Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in the Republic, strides into the chamber. Senators rise to their feet. But this isn't just another day at the office. It's a day of conspiracy, of betrayal, of blood. In moments, he's surrounded. Daggers flash in the light. Even a man he considered a friend, Marcus Junius Brutus, delivers one of the final devastating blows. Stabbed 23 times, Caesar collapses at the foot of a statue of his old rival, Pompey. How did it come to this? How does a man so powerful, so loved by the people and his soldiers, a man who conquered nations and remade Rome itself, end up murdered by his own colleagues? To understand how Caesar fell, we have to look at his incredible rise, a story that began in a city that was tearing itself apart. Gaius Julius Caesar was born in 100 BC to the Julii, an old-school patrician family who claimed they were descended from the goddess Venus herself. But for all their divine connections, the Julii weren't exactly rolling in cash or influence at the time. Young Caesar grew up in a Rome convulsed by violence, a battleground for two political factions, the Populares, who claimed to fight for the common people, and the Optimates, the conservative aristocrats who ran the Senate. The Caesars were tied to the Populares through an aunt's marriage to the legendary general Gaius Marius. That connection became a huge liability when a rival general, Sulla, took control of Rome and started a bloody purge of his enemies. Caesar, just a teenager, found himself on Sulla's hit list, and Sulla ordered him to divorce his wife, Cornelia, daughter of a major Populares leader. Caesar flat out refused. It was an act of defiance that almost got him killed. He was forced to go on the run, his inheritance was seized, and his life was declared forfeit. He was eventually pardoned, but the experience shaped him. It taught him the brutal rules of power and the deadly price of political failure. His early career became a masterclass in both survival and ambition. While on his way to military service, he was famously kidnapped by pirates. When they demanded a ransom of 20 talents, Caesar was supposedly insulted by how low it was and insisted they ask for 50. During his captivity, he bossed the pirates around, told them to be quiet when he was trying to sleep, and read them his poetry. He joked that when he was free, he'd come back and crucify every last one of them. The pirates thought it was hilarious, but after his ransom was paid, Caesar raised a fleet, hunted them down, and did exactly what he'd promised. This little episode tells you everything you need to know about Caesar. He was audacious, ridiculously self-confident, and absolutely ruthless. Back in Rome, Caesar started his methodical climb up the cursus honorum, the ladder of political offices. He served as a military tribune and a financial administrator, building a reputation as a masterful public speaker and a friend to the common Roman. Then, in 63 BC, he pulled off a stunning upset and got himself elected Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest. It was a prestigious job for life, but Caesar knew that prestige wasn't enough. He needed real power, and in Rome, that meant you needed two things: powerful friends and lots of money. By 60 BC, Roman politics was dominated by two men: Pompey the Great, a war hero who felt the Senate didn't give him enough respect, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, arguably the richest man in Rome, who desperately wanted the kind of military glory Pompey had. They were bitter rivals, but Caesar, ever the opportunist, saw a way to bring them together. He brokered a secret deal, forging an unofficial but incredibly powerful alliance we now call the First Triumvirate. Crassus brought the money, Pompey brought the legions, and Caesar was the brilliant political operator who made it all tick. To seal the deal, Pompey married Caesar's beloved daughter, Julia. Together, these three men basically ran the Roman state, forcing their own agendas through a paralyzed Senate. As consul in 59 BC, Caesar passed laws that gave land to Pompey's veterans and pushed his partner's interests, often using brute intimidation to get his way. His term as consul was a huge success, but it also earned him some powerful enemies. He needed a new power base, somewhere far away from the backstabbing politics of Rome, and he found it in Gaul. From 58 to 50 BC, Caesar launched one of the most incredible military campaigns in history, the Gallic Wars. As governor over a huge territory covering modern-day France, Belgium, and Switzerland, Caesar had a single goal: total conquest. For 8 brutal years, His legions stomped across Europe, crushing hundreds of tribes and pushing Rome's borders all the way to the English Channel and the Rhine River. He smashed the migrating Helvetii tribe at the Battle of Bibracte. He drove the Germanic Suebi and their king Ariovistus back across the Rhine. He even launched the first Roman invasions of Britain and built a bridge across the Rhine in just 10 days. A stunning feat of engineering, really just to show everyone what Roman power looked like. Now, the Gallic tribes were fierce warriors, but they were also notoriously divided. Caesar was a master at playing them against each other, but in 52 BC, he faced the fight of his life. The tribes finally united under a charismatic leader named Vercingetorix. After handing Caesar a rare defeat at Gergovia, Vercingetorix pulled his forces back to the hilltop fortress of Alesia. What Caesar did next was a masterstroke of siege warfare. He had his legions build an 11-mile wall of fortifications around Alesia, trapping Vercingetorix inside. But then a massive Gallic relief army showed up to attack the Romans from behind. So Caesar simply ordered his men to build a second outer wall. The Romans were now the besieged and the besiegers, fighting a desperate war on two fronts. In one final, bloody battle, Caesar's legions somehow held their ground, breaking the relief army in the spirit of the warriors inside Alesia. Vercingetorix had no choice but to surrender, and the Gallic resistance was effectively over. The conquest of Gaul made Caesar a household name and fabulously rich. More importantly, it gave him a loyal, battle-hardened army. It also made him dangerously powerful. And back in Rome, his enemies were watching, and they were terrified. But while Caesar was busy conquering Gaul, the triumvirate back in Rome was crumbling. Julia, Caesar's daughter and Pompey's wife, tragically died in childbirth, cutting the personal link between the two men. Then, in 53 BC, Crassus was killed, leading a catastrophic invasion of Parthia. That left Caesar and Pompey as the last two giants standing. Pompey, now allied with the conservative Senate, started getting very nervous about Caesar's fame and military might. The Senate sent Caesar an ultimatum: disband your army, return to Rome as a private citizen, and face prosecution for things you did as consul. For Caesar, this wasn't just a suggestion, it was a political death sentence. He knew that without his army to protect him, his enemies would ruin him. On the night of January 10th, 49 BC, he led his 13th legion to the banks of the Rubicon, a small river marking the boundary of his province. Crossing that river with an army was an undeniable act of treason. It was a declaration of war. Pausing on the bank, he is said to have uttered the famous words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. By crossing the Rubicon, Caesar sparked a civil war. Pompey and the Senate, completely caught off guard by how fast Caesar was moving, scrambled to flee Rome. The war that followed would engulf the Mediterranean, from Spain to Greece and Africa. It all came to a head at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece, where Caesar's smaller, more experienced army crushed Pompey's forces. Pompey fled to Egypt hoping for safety, but he was assassinated just before Caesar arrived. The civil war was won. Gaius Julius Caesar was now the undisputed master of the Roman world. Caesar was named dictator for 10 years, and then, in early 44 BC, dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. He launched a sweeping program of reforms, aiming to fix the republic's deep-seated problems. He granted Roman citizenship to more people in the provinces, binding the empire together. He started massive public works projects to create jobs and rebuild the city. He gave land to his veterans and reformed a corrupt local government system. But maybe his most lasting legacy was the calendar. The old Roman calendar was a total mess. So much so that the seasons were out of whack. With some help from astronomers, Caesar introduced the Julian calendar, a 365-day solar calendar with a leap year every 4 years. A system so effective it's the direct ancestor of the one we use today. But as he gathered more power, he also started acting more like a king. He minted coins with his own face on them, a first for a living Roman. A golden throne was set up for him in the Senate. His allies showered him with titles like Father of the Fatherland. And then there was his very public affair with the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. They even had a son, Caesarion, which was a huge scandal for the traditional Roman elite. For many senators, it looked like their worst fears were coming true, that Caesar planned to tear down the Republic and call himself king. Before we get to the final bloody act of Caesar's life, if you're enjoying this journey through history, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. That fear of a king became a rallying cry for a conspiracy of senators who called themselves the Liberators. Led by Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, a man Caesar had pardoned and promoted, they decided they had to kill one man to save the Republic. On the Ides of March, they did, but the assassins' desperate gamble didn't save the Republic. Instead, it kicked off more than a decade of new civil wars that finally destroyed the very system they had killed to protect. And out of that chaos, Caesar's named heir, his great-nephew Octavian, would eventually rise to the top. After crushing all his rivals, he would take the name Augustus and become Rome's first true emperor, finishing the job his great-uncle had started. So who was Julius Caesar? A populist hero who fought for the people, or a ruthless tyrant who destroyed a 500-year-old republic for his own glory? The truth is, he was both. That's what makes him so fascinating. His military genius expanded Rome's world, his reforms reshaped its society, and his personal ambition tore down its political system, clearing the way for the Roman Empire. His name became a synonym for absolute power, Kaiser, Tsar. 2,000 years later, the world he made is gone, but the shadow of the man who crossed the Rubicon remains.